This is TWiT.
There are some clear problems at Google. One, of course, the firing of Timnit Gebru and the difficulty they're going through over, in general, their diversity programs, their inclusiveness programs. Employees seem to be a little bit upset around a variety of things, whether it's government contracts or this problem with the AI ethics committee. And then there are a lot of people who have lost faith in Google because they seem to announce products then kill them so rapidly that people are very reluctant to go all in on those products. I'm sure there's justifications for that, but it doesn't look like a company on the move. And I have to say, in 2020, it really felt somnolent. The Pixel 5 was just like we can do this.
That'd be something.
They haven't put out a new Pixel book or a new Chromebook. It really felt like the company, and maybe because of COVID, I don't know, but it really felt like the company was not on the march. And I have to point out that other companies like Apple took advantage of 2020 to really do some interesting stuff, but not Google.
Are you thinking about devices, or are you thinking, like Google announced some interesting research around AI, some interesting results around DeepMind that could be eventually productized.
Okay. That's what Google I/O's keynote was, which was a lot of stuff in the labs. That's not a product. Google's always done that, from Verily trying to figure out a way to use contact lenses to measure blood glucose, failed. The Project Loon, now shuttered. Google's always had a lot of interest research projects. That doesn't mean anything as to the outside world. It's just, interesting.
Well, Google's core value isn't in devices. And so when I hear you, the examples you're throwing out are devices. So I'm trying to think
what's something exciting that Google's done in the last year? Something new and different.
Translate.
They've had Translate forever. They're coasting. I gotta say, they did
a much better job. It's improved immensely, though, and it was in their AI.
And this is actually a really interesting question. And I'm not challenging you just to be snicky. I'm thinking about, I don't know what that means. I'm thinking about things like, where is the value in tech going to be? Is it going to be in I am producing devices a la Apple and thinking about things like, when is my heads-up display coming? Or is it going to be in services a la Amazon? Or is it in better services delivered through AI, and Google just hasn't figured out how to monetize? I truly am as a reporter.
Tell me what they've done that's interesting. Nest hasn't done anything in a year. More than a year.
I feel like they've done some interesting things on the cloud side. I feel like they've done some interesting works on the back end related to security, but a lot of these are nerdy and I don't cover them as much. When I look at their TPU designs and their embedded ML efforts, I'm like, there's some cool stuff there, but I don't know how realistic it'll ever be.
Chrome has had 7 0 days this year. They just had another one this week. I know. There's all sorts of issues, and I don't see anything interesting coming out of Google in the last couple of years. I really don't. Even this documents feature that they've added to Workspace feels like a reheated wave, maybe something that Microsoft's been doing. It doesn't seem inspired by anything. When's the last time they came up with a Gmail, for instance?
That's a fair point. It was interesting in the chat. Somebody said, "What about Fuchsia OS?" If Google's created a whole operating system from scratch that most people haven't even noticed, that's built from the ground up to, provide security, or something that, current operating systems don't do a good job at. And I think Stacey makes some really good points about you don't notice all the places where AI is. The search team is never going to talk about all the ways that artificial intelligence or machine learning has improved their search. But, it creates a much more defensible position where it's harder for other companies to try to compete in search. But I think you're also fair to say, look, if you're thinking about outfitting your smart home, do you think of Google first? Where's that Google Chromebook laptop I need? That sort of thing.
Amen to that. Yeah, I think Leo, everything you list, Google killing well-liked services, the I/O being unimpressive, the messaging mess, which we'll get to later, the AI ethics and equity problems, all stipulated, Your Honor. But I think Matt's point is really important too about the age they are in right now. is I think twofold. It's a lawyer-run age. It's a lobbying, congressional-run age, where if they started doing too much that was too exciting and big, they would get hammered for it, for overusing their power and going crazy. And second, it's a huge company now. Eric Schmidt always said that the biggest problem Google was going to have was when it grows too big. And so it's also a Ruth Porat age, which is going to be about economic efficiencies. And so that's not exciting. Just like Microsoft for a lot of years was not at all, for I would say its whole damn life, but we'll leave that another day, was not exciting. But it became a well-run company. And I think that's the kind of phase that Google's in. So maybe we shouldn't have a show about Google. I don't want to go too far down this path. But I think that it's a different time for the company, too.
Well, yeah, one of the reasons we started this show, something like 12 years ago, was Google all by itself. Was a single company doing all sorts of interesting things, changing the world around us. Look, I'm a fan. I want Google to be the Google of old. I want it to be innovative and exciting and groundbreaking. Maybe this is just part of the life cycle of any corporation.
What excites me is who's going to compete with Google. Who's going to come up with the next new thing outside Google? I think that's where we should be looking.
Well, I'm going to talk about Brave Search in a little bit. I think that's pretty interesting, but I don't know. I mean, Chrome is the #1 browser in the world by a huge margin, and in fact, what's happening is that other companies are nibbling away at Chrome just by duplicating it, including Microsoft, using the Chromium engine and making their own version of Chrome.
So don't just blame Google. Blame the entire world of mobile phones. Nobody's exciting us. It's all pretty much just morbid right now. Blame the entire world of browsers. It's arrived. It does what it's supposed to do. What do you expect? Right? So rather than looking at what's there, then we got to look at something new. Well, if any of these companies that are in regulatory trouble and political trouble try to do something majorly new, to go into a new area, they're going to get body parts chopped off.
Well, they're being quiet about it. But if you look at things like, we can talk about this, but we are about to enter into a new era of computing. It's going to be highly distributed. There's going to be lots of processing happening at each node. It's going to be both, not just the processing power being distributed, but like the databases and, well, networking is always distributed. All of that is going to require a different model. And Google's already built a lot of this at the macro level for its data centers and for the cloud stuff. So, and they have those engineers. And then if you look at what they're doing in containers to run software at all these different levels, I think what we're kind of in this just really super boring era where people, like whenever I talk about like machine learning at the edge, people are like super bored because they don't understand why it's going to be a big deal and they don't understand the computer problems yet. But rest assured, the people at Google do. I mean, the people at Apple do as well. I mean, nobody's going to be caught flat-footed if they're in this world.
No, but I agree. Google should be ascendant in artificial intelligence.
They might be. We just haven't gotten there yet. I mean, if you look at like TPU Lite, you look at their work with Kubernetes, you look at the partnership deals they're doing on like the industrial IoT side to kind of bring in some of this stuff. They're making a lot of the right moves, but no one gives a poop about them because they're not gadgets and they're not sexy.
But you know what, Stacey? I think the larger
they're not
point
products.
Is, well, but that's okay.
It doesn't have to be gadgets, but there's no products either. I mean, at some point,
you can't build products until the infrastructure has to be there. You can't build McDonald's until the freeways are there. You can't build the freeways until we figure out the best type of concrete to use. I mean, right now we're at the concrete laying state of this next era of computing. I really believe that. And I'm not saying Google will win.
I agree. Right. That's true too. The other thing is, and I'm not the first to say this, Clay Shirky said it, others have said it, it gets interesting when the technology gets boring. Right? Watch out, Leo. I'm going to go back a few hundred years here. It took 150 years after Gutenberg, there, have a drink, everybody, before we got the newspaper, the modern novel, the essay, and the market for plays. Because the technology was boring. We knew what it was. Everybody knew how to do it. It was no big deal. And then people started to say, oh, I can do this with it. And that's when the world around it gets interesting. So I think you're looking at the wrong place. What Google has done with translation is going to enable really interesting things to happen around the world. It's going to be really interesting what happens to be able to read information literature because of the it's advanced leap years from where it was, and it's boring. Fine, others will make good use out of it, and that's where the excitement is.
Matt, does it pain you when I attack Google like this? Is it like family? Do you feel like
no? I've got a little bit of distance, and I also know sometimes you stir the pot for fun. And it's no, never. But I think it's interesting because Stacey's point about highways and concrete. Like if you think about it, like Google is only just now, I think, presenting some of the stuff where they've done software-defined networking. So like the joke at Google used to be we didn't just build our own car, like we vulcanized the rubber on the tires, right? And so in some areas, Google is only just now revealing some of the ways that they've gotten far ahead in some ways, and maybe they're being independently recreated at Amazon and all these other things. But you see that. I do think thinking about machine learning, voice recognition and transcription has gotten so much better even the last few years. And there was this article that was talking about you can almost have a coach that teaches you to speak another language just using AI now. So like if Google rolled out a way where I could practice my Spanish and not have awkward interactions with humans until I feel like I can speak better than a 4-year-old, that would be really great for me and probably a lot of other people and lead to a lot better understanding around the world. And so it feels like some of this stuff, the infrastructure is there and you won't quite know it until people pounce and then they're like, oh, we call everybody in the United States, all the businesses once per month with AI that's indistinguishable from a human voice just to make sure we've got the COVID hours right or something like that, where you don't even know it until it's done.
I think Google has a problem, which is they're too successful. This is historically is always a problem in any business, especially in technology. They basically mint money with their advertising and search, and there isn't a huge amount of incentive. Everything else is at a loss. So there's just, literally everything else is at a loss. It's all other bets, but they make so much money in search that they can just kind of.
Well, it's not search though they make the money. It's
like
advertising.
Search.
It's
and
advertising.
Advertising on search.
That's a weakness. Well, advertising otherwise too.
Yeah.
Double click.
But what if they're building, think about this, what if they're building, and everyone seems to be trying to build this, a scalable digital assistant. So everybody has a little digital voice in their ear that helps them.
I would love that, but I see no progress in that direction. Is Google Assistant better than it was 5 years ago?
Stacey's not finished.
Like a good assistant, you take them almost completely for granted. They learn what you need and they deliver it when you need it. And you may never realize until you have a crappy assistant how great your one was.
Okay, but you're writing science fiction at this point. Okay, fine.
No, I'm not. If I look at, like Matt just talked about, things like duplex. So, or calling things up to make sure the hours
Duplex
are
is a good
there.
example. They showed that how many years ago?
2.
Seems like 2.
3?
Okay.
2 or 3?
I can't wait to try it.
The point is, some of the stuff they're building isn't for you in the methods they're building. They're building it so they can create ways to get information to you the way you want. And because we are human, that means they've got to figure out how to deliver something via the web, which they're pretty good at. They have to figure out how to deliver it in a format for Google voice type displays. They have to figure out how to build routines into your smart home that make sense and deliver exactly what you need. And they're working on that. But those things get announced as silly little features that we talk about in the changelog. And if you don't bring it back to 5 years ago. So I think we're going to have to stop measuring technology based on cool devices and start measuring it based on 5 years ago. What did my experience look like? And today, how much smoother is it? And it's going to be super incremental, and we're not going to be awed by it. And I don't know what to say about that.
Think of the pandemic without the internet, or just without Google. Right? Think of what it would have been like without that. And again, when it gets boring, that means that it's useful and it's part of our lives. It's just integrated in.